I wouldn't trust Elon Musk to develop any technology because I don't think he has empathy for people. And so I've read stories about the Neuralink testing that the animals were tearing the sensors out. But with that said, there's lots of other folks who are also doing implantable neuronic controllers. And I'm not a fan of Neuralink because of the company culture and because of the leader, but I am a fan of letting people who weren't able to walk be able to walk. And I think it is this new age of implantable robotics enabling us to reconnect our bodies.
Welcome to another edition of Key Community Leaders on the Progressive Access Zone podcast, sponsored by the Hispanic Community Counseling Service. Today, I have Matt Williams from Philly Unlimited as our guest. Matt, really appreciate you being here. Matt, what is PhillyUnlimited.com all about?
Thanks for having us on the podcast, Atlas, and we really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the audience. PhillyUnlimited.com has built a mobile app to put all of the available support in the city directly into the hands of the people living on the street and people coming back from incarceration without a lot of social support.
Wow. Now, Matt, that's how we connected, meaning that, we've got the blueprint execution plan. We're looking to create a safe corridor. We had a chance to connect together, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, I really saw a value in your app and how it's something that we can incorporate. Now, as I was talking to you right now, your app is what I call serving more on the back end, meaning when people are coming from incarceration, where of course we want to talk preventative as far as to prevent them from going. But let's talk about the back end service that your app is designed for if someone is coming out of incarceration. What exactly is it set up to do?
Okay, great questions. So, we've gone around the city for about 5 years. My partner is Keith Scott, who is a community service director in the Office of Violence Prevention for the mayor's office. The mobile app was his idea, and we've gone around and interviewed people in the city. So, one feature is free downloadable resume. A lot of these folks have never had a resume, and that's a barrier to getting a job. Another important thing is the ability to call things like the panic room and to reach out to a mentor for active listening and mediation so that it's not just a mobile app, it's an ability to reach out to people and have people reach out to you. It's very important.
Great. And you mentioned Keith Scott. Is it Keith Scott?
Yes, Keith
Right.
Scott.
And of course, he at one time was with the organization PAN. He's now with you, and he's one part of the brain trust behind this. So with regards to getting this app, how do you plan to promote this app? And as far as how do you plan to let people who are incarcerated know about this app so it's a resource for them?
So I'm under orders not to talk about the pilot that we recently signed, but within the next few weeks, we will announce a major pilot working with people, yes, coming back from incarceration on the so-called back end, because that's where Keith's knowledge is, and that's really what we set up the mobile app for. After that, we are meeting with the United Way in April, and we're trying to work with these large development organizations to get the word out. But honestly, we need help telling people that this service is available and that there is a mobile app that can help them.
Right. Now, with that being said, I told you the blueprint execution plan has 3 criteria, meaning 1, awareness, prevention, and solution. That's the core key elements to the blueprint execution plan, which comes under the umbrella of the Progressive Access Zone. So Matt, like I said, you've got some back end, but this app can also be something that someone can use on, we'll call on the front end, meaning my thought was how we could work together is that we can promote this app, download it for people who are looking for resources or that person who might be on the fringe of creating or getting involved in some type of criminal activity, that whether it's the panic room or maybe some type of mentorship or counseling. So how do you feel, that's the position I see. It could also serve on the front end for someone if they want to download it and get some support that way versus on the back end.
No, that's exactly right, Atlas. And that's one of the most important things about our mobile app is that it's really an app that's connected to people. And it's about creating the community in just the way that you were describing. So while we're focusing our initial pilot on people coming from the so-called back end, it's freely available, and we want the people who are potentially going to fall into violence, or people who are desperate in these neighborhoods of high gun violence. We want them to have a space to talk with someone who can mentor them, to settle beefs and learn how to do active listening in ways that reduce violence and improve relationships.
Great. How long has PhillyUnlimited.com been in existence?
So we registered as a Pennsylvania charity in August of 2022. However, Keith Scott and I have been doing this work since 2019. And really, on the weekend of the George Floyd protests in Philly, we decided to go full out and have just spent every cent and every spare moment to build this mobile app.
So, Matt, talk to me right now. When you think about what's going on with the gun violence, carjacking, and other things in the city of Philadelphia, all right? And you've come up with this app. What else do you think is creating this problem? And we have a new mayor in the city, okay? And from a solution standpoint, because on one hand, you've got whether it's from a lot of kids between the age of 13 through 20 who are committing different crimes. Unfortunately, they're being incarcerated. Some are getting maybe 5 years, some are getting life, all right? And then it can even go up to 20 to 30 and 35. What do you think is one of the core issues that's creating this problem, in your opinion?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of core issues. One of the core issues is I've experienced, I grew up in West Philly, and half my friends were white and half my friends were people of color. And time and again, I've seen that the people that have an arrest record are immediately tagged and essentially pushed away from like steady career employment. And if there's one thing I want to do, it's to reconnect the people who've been through incarceration with their economic best lives, which will help the city and remove the stigma, because these are good, smart citizens. And in particular, I'm sorry but Atlas, all these school tours that you've taken us on since January, if there's one thing I've learned is that these kids are amazing and they're really smart. And there isn't a person in there that I don't feel is just as capable of learning about STEM and sciences and careers as the kids who I went to school with at Central High. So this is my opportunity to reach the kids in the so-called low information neighborhoods, which are more prone to violence because they're starved of opportunity.
Great. And as you mentioned, Matt is part of the Live and Love Gun Violence Prevention Tour, where we are touring around to different schools, YMCAs, and other locations. And Matt, with that being said, if someone wanted to learn how to build an app, right, like you're doing, how could they contact you, and what does it take? What's the basic fundamentals for just, say, building an app in general?
Okay, great question. So first of all, our nonprofit was accepted by the University of Pennsylvania's Pennovation Startup Labs in August of 2022. And we're there to help connect UPenn's mission of bringing out modern technology, world-class life science to these very neighborhoods and to these very kids who have been neglected and whose parents have had economic opportunity taken from them. So what I'd like them to do is go to PhillyUnlimited.com, leave your name, and we will get back to you. What's happening is we have a collection of somewhere between 5 and 10 kids who we use as data interns. They work with building the mobile app. They work with refreshing the mobile app so that we're giving the best listings. And in exchange, we're offering training in data journalism, data science, and offering scientifically valid ways to track the social inequality in the city such that the new mayor can take action.
So Matt, in this field, and let's just right now, before we get into AI, okay, but let's just keep it on the app right now.
Sure.
When it just comes to building an app, what type of background does someone need as they listen to our podcast right now to build an app? I mean, of course, you can go online and, sort of get assistance in just making an app maybe in 10 hours or less, but if you're trying to sort of be that developer behind the scenes, what type of skill set do you need? And when it comes to maybe trying to seek a job out there, where do you see the pay scale starting in this field of technology when it comes to app development and building?
App development, you're going to start at probably $50 an hour. You'll probably make minimum $80,000. You'll go up to $150,000 if you're good. But I don't encourage going into mobile app for the money because there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of patience that it takes to build skills. And if you're just waiting for the payday, you might not have the patience to get through the training. But let me say this. 50 years ago, the internet was created by volunteers and it was maintained by volunteers. And today's internet, which is run by big corporations, is entirely different. And Atlas, I say this because mobile apps and IT development were meant to get work and to give access to people without education and who are outside the main educational realm. So what it takes is patience. It takes being willing to make something and have it break 10 times before it works on the 11th time. But if you have that patience, you can have a great job, and there is no educational barrier to learning to become an incredibly successful mobile app developer.
Wow. So there's a lot there. And this app right now that you're about in launching,
Yeah, it's launched,
okay,
yeah.
is this the first app for your company?
No, we built another app so all the mailrooms in New York City for the big corporations. I was hired by a company 5 years ago to build a mobile app that they use on iPads. So they check in all the packages. And my lead programmer was Floyd Johnson, who lives in Point Breeze, comes from Gary, Indiana. One of the smartest, one of the kindest people I've ever met. And he's been my lead programmer for 5 years. So we did that. And then we've come and created the second mobile app in Philly. So it's our second major mobile app release.
So even though you don't encourage someone to maybe get right directly into, say say development as maybe their key thing, but you're talking $50 an hour, maybe $80,000 to $150,000 potential salary, if I heard you correctly.
You did.
Right. What is your, when it comes to educational background, what type of training do you have?
Okay, good.
You know?
Well, I have a degree in cognitive science.
Okay, so talk about that for a minute.
So it's the study of the brain from physiology, like doctors look at it, also from linguistics, the way we develop language, also from psychology, the way our minds work and the way our emotions fit, and finally, computer science, the way we create models of cognition. And when I got out of Vassar College in 1991 with a degree, I immediately started working as a programmer. And I spent several years at big companies like LexisNexis and Wyndham Worldwide and Adobe Systems, creating systems that learn and understand. And so that's how I became an AI person, because I've taken my cognitive science learning and used my programming to create what turns out to be artificial intelligence.
Wow. So when you talk about cognitive, what was
Science,
that?
yeah.
Science, that sounds pretty impressive. So once again, you mentioned AI. So let's get right to it. Generative pre-trained transformer, otherwise known as GPT chat.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. You hear people talking about it. Tell me what it is, how effective is it, and what's your impression of it right now?
I'll tell you what it is, how effective it is, and the impact that it can have, because it's easy to mistake. I'll talk about it, which it's not that impressive as an AI innovation, but it can have a tremendous impact on society. So I want to be clear about that. But with that said, ChatGPT-4 is basically, it's what we call broad and shallow. It touches a lot of different data sources. It's basically spitting back its best summary of what it read. What it's not doing is what our intelligence does, which is thinking about it, considering it, and putting new ideas on it. So ChatGPT-4 essentially creates summaries, and they're working to figure out why some of the so-called hallucinations give them bad interpretations. It's basically at the level of a baby. So it's not even aware like a baby, but.
So how would someone utilize it right now, or is it still more in the beta phase, or as far as where is it at? And if the general person, because people talk about it some, but how is it being used at the moment, if it's really being utilized that much?
It is actually being used quite a bit. I would say it's useful for things that don't have lives at stake. So if you want to generate a marketing program, or if you want to create an event for children, or if you want, ChatGPT 4 can pass a legal test because it can find the answers and spit them back, but it doesn't actually know about the law. So
Is it similar to Watson, like the IBM Watson then, when you say it can find an answer? I mean, there was a lot of talk about IBM Watson. So how would you compare it to something like that?
I've worked with Watson quite a bit. So Watson has some interesting stuff that it does do some understanding, so-called semantic understanding. So we all go to Google. I type in Matt Williams in there, and the results don't come back with the words Matt Williams. It comes in with things that are related to Matt Williams around it. So that is based on, that's something that Google, made, everybody does that now. And that's the basis for artificial intelligence. It's like this, it's called a stored ontology or a stored domain map. And that is actually what AI is. What we see from ChatGPT 4 is using automation to take advantage of this new process.
Wow. Okay, so Matt, probably about a month ago, I reached out to you. I think I sent you a text message with a link, and this is talking about Elon Musk and he's this development of the Neuralink, and they were utilizing a human being, okay, as I guess you could say a guinea pig or a prototype, and they inserted a chip into him for this Neuralink. Now, Elon Musk's position was this is for people maybe who has some type of disabilities, his vision for it, and this would allow them to be able to command things, I believe, just by thinking about it. So please elaborate. What are your thoughts on this Neuralink? I mean, not that you have to be disabled to use it, but this is where I believe he was coming from initially for it. But what do you think about Neuralink just in general and how it could be incorporated into society? What do you think?
I wouldn't trust Elon Musk to develop any technology because I don't think he has empathy for people. And so I've read stories about the Neuralink testing that the animals were tearing the sensors out. But with that said, there's lots of other folks who are also doing implantable neuronic controllers. And I'm not a fan of Neuralink because of the company culture and because of the leader, but I am a fan of letting people who weren't able to walk be able to walk. And I think it is this new age of implantable robotics enabling us to reconnect our bodies.
Wow. So, of course, we were just talking about Philly Unlimited and as far as getting into programming mobile apps or being an app developer. When it comes to information technology, AI, I assume it's a similar background, but if one wanted to get into this field, because this is new, we're hearing more about AI, even though you can say, I hear it's been around for a while, if it's not like information technology is new. And once again, a lot of things are in the military, whether you want to talk about the microwave or the tile on top of the shingles on your roof could have been on a space shuttle, and now they have a different version of it, that now it's on your house that, will last for like 100 years. So with that being said, what type of background, as far as if you were going to college or some type of tech school, would you need to get into this AI information technology?
It's a good question. The four paths I would say would be you could study the mind through psychology. You could study computer science to understand about mobile apps and about modeling minds. You could study linguistics to understand the way Twitter and the TikTok algorithms work has a lot to do with the way they interpret the words that we put in. That's something called natural language processing. This is a huge expanding industry that lots of people would be able to get jobs and build careers for.
Right. Now, speaking of jobs and careers, of course, probably about 3 months ago, you had the big strike with the Hollywood screenwriters because they were in fear of their job because AI, I see the benefits of it. You may say, well, hey, let me type in something on help me with a resume or help me with a business proposal, or something of that nature, or a paragraph for an introduction for your website. The AI technology can easily create something like that. So how do you feel this comes in as far, almost like if you're a factory worker and they're adding in new computers that can replace some of the labor from that standpoint, maybe more cost effective to the manufacturer, but you're putting people out of work. So how do you see this AI integrating in when it comes to its ability? And just with this example of the Hollywood screenwriters.
Well, let me start with the Hollywood screenwriters. Great question. It's really interesting. Like, just speaking as like an AI nerdy person who's like in the world, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even a year ago, I never expected the first AI flashpoint in culture to be around art. I just think it's fascinating. And my kids were like initially upset, and I think the strike was important. And I think it's really important for society to set these limits right now. So it was unexpected that that was kind of the first flashpoint for AI. And yes, just for the record, we're in the era when it's can you put a gun on it? So AI's new. They're like, can you put a gun on it? It's going to do some terrible things, but just like roads for the Romans, and just like airplanes, just because when people create things, they start out using it for weaponry or vice, doesn't mean that they don't have long-term value to improve life. And that's how I see artificial intelligence, which is quite different than the Elon Musk version.
Wow. So here's my last question to you, Matt. It just so happens I was watching an episode of Law and Order last night. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but once in a while I'll watch Law, and so I'm a big sports guy, as you know, right? So last night, the episode sort of revolved around AI deep fake technology.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so that's so dangerous. And for those of you who might not know what deep fake is, this is the ability to create an image, or almost like if they could place me at a convenience store as if I was, like the episode on Law and Order last night was that they possibly put this guy in front of an ATM machine and he shot another guy, but they had the gun in the wrong hand, but it was so convincing, this deep fake. So why don't you talk about that for a quick minute, as we get ready to close out this episode?
Thank you for the time, and I appreciate it. Yeah, it's incredibly scary. AI is not going to take away jobs. AI is going to make new jobs, but deep fakes is a terrible thing. And the only solution will be to create AI that identifies deep fakes. So it's really just like a cat and mouse game, just like everything else. And deep fakes are the biggest threat to like the election and like understanding truth this year.
Wow. Now that's pretty serious right there. So you got to keep that in mind whenever you hear something on the internet or maybe even on some TV networks. You've got to maybe try to do some extra due diligence, right? Just to make sure it's a credible source. This is not going to be easy to do. Matt, I really appreciate you coming out today and being a guest on Key Community Leaders on the Progressive Access Zone podcast, sponsored by the Hispanic Community Counseling Service. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thank you very much, everybody. PhillyUnlimited.com.
All right.